Karoline Leavitt had been invited to the morning debate, a talk show known for its heated discussions and no-nonsense hosts. Across from her sat Paul Danning, a veteran journalist famous for his hard-hitting style. He didn't just interview guests, he challenged them. And today, his target was a rising conservative voice who wasn't afraid to push back. The segment started predictably. Paul questioned Karoline about media bias, accusing conservative networks of spreading misinformation. He claimed mainstream news was simply correcting the record. Karoline, calm and composed, countered with facts, examples where major outlets had misrepresented stories, left out crucial details, or twisted narratives. The debate was sharp but professional. Then the tone shifted. Paul leaned forward, his voice laced with frustration. "People like you," he said, narrowing his eyes, "are the reason this country is going backward. You act like conservatives are being silenced, but you're the ones shutting down free speech." The studio fell silent. Karoline held his gaze, her expression unshaken. She had dealt with tough interviews before, but this wasn't just tough. It was personal. She let the moment stretch, then spoke with measured confidence. "Excuse me?" Paul doubled down. "You and your people want control, not free speech." A chill ran through the room. The producers exchanged uneasy glances. The crew tensed, sensing the weight of his words. Karoline, however, remained still. She had him exactly where she wanted. "Would you like to clarify what you mean by your people?" she asked, her voice even. Paul hesitated, just for a second. But on live television, a second was an eternity. Cameras rolled. The audience watched. The internet waited. He tried to recover. "I meant conservatives," he said quickly. "People who push an agenda of division instead of progress." Karoline tilted her head slightly. "So just to be clear, when you said your people, you were only referring to political ideology?" Paul pressed his lips into a thin line. He knew he had walked into a trap. If he pushed back, he risked confirming what people were already thinking. If he admitted a mistake, he looked weak. He chose the worst option. He deflected. "Oh, come on, Karoline. Don't play the victim," he scoffed. "This is exactly the kind of bad faith outrage I'm talking about. Instead of addressing my argument, you're twisting my words." Karoline didn't blink. "I don't need to twist anything, Paul. Your words speak for themselves." A flicker of irritation crossed his face, but he pushed on. "Maybe if conservatives spent less time whining about being canceled and more time actually contributing to society, we wouldn't be having this conversation." There it was, the moment that changed everything. A thick silence filled the studio. Even Paul seemed to realize he had gone too far. But it was too late. The clip spread like wildfire. Within minutes, social media exploded with outrage. Hashtags trended. "Char fire Paul Danning," "Chan media bias exposed," "Sanintang Karoline was right." Major sponsors of the show started pulling their advertisements. Within hours, the network issued a statement placing Paul on indefinite suspension. But that wasn't enough for the public. The pressure mounted, and by the next morning, the network made its decision. Paul Danning was fired. Some called it justice. Others called it cancel culture. Conservative media rallied behind Karoline, portraying her as the woman who stood up to media arrogance. Left-leaning outlets distanced themselves from Paul, but some worried about the precedent his firing set. And then, Paul broke his silence. In a video statement, he claimed he had been fired for speaking the truth. He painted himself as a victim of media censorship, gaining a massive online following overnight. Soon after, he launched his own show on YouTube, branding himself as a truth-teller, silenced by the establishment. Karoline? She stayed quiet. She didn't gloat. She didn't argue. She let the world debate for her. But one thing was clear. She had changed the game. The controversy only grew. News segments dissected the interview. Political commentators took sides, and social media continued the battle. Was Paul unfairly targeted, or had he simply revealed his true colors? Conservative circles hailed Karoline as a new kind of media warrior, sharp, fearless, and impossible to rattle. Her social media following skyrocketed. She was invited to speak at major events, and interview requests flooded in. Meanwhile, Paul doubled down on his new image. His YouTube show racked up millions of views. His supporters saw him as a martyr, someone who had been sacrificed for daring to challenge the mainstream. He started fundraising for a media platform dedicated to what he called real journalism, and the donations poured in. At the same time, behind the scenes, TV executives scrambled. The morning debate faced backlash from both sides. While some viewers applauded them for taking action, others accused them of caving to online mobs. Advertisers hesitated. Ratings fluctuated. Some speculated that the show's future was in jeopardy. Then, a leaked email surfaced. An internal network memo revealed discussions about whether Paul should have been fired at all. The executives had debated if a suspension would have sufficed, but ultimately, the decision was made out of fear. Fear of backlash, fear of boycotts, fear of losing their standing in a cutthroat media landscape. The revelation fueled an even bigger firestorm. Did the morning debate act on principle, or had they simply bowed to pressure? Karoline, now more influential than ever, was asked to comment. Again, she remained measured. The media should be held accountable, just as they hold the powerful accountable, she said in a single tweet. Nothing more. No personal attacks. Just a statement that left room for interpretation. Meanwhile, Paul used the memo as ammunition. "They didn't fire me because I was wrong," he declared in a new video. "They fired me because they were scared." His base ate it up. His subscriber count exploded. The media cycle churned on. Karoline became a fixture on television panels. Paul became a rebel voice with a devoted audience. Both of them, in their own ways, had won. The debate grew beyond them. Experts analyzed the impact of media bias. Pundits argued whether cancel culture was justified or dangerous. Viewers questioned the ethics of media power, wondering who truly controlled the narrative. Karoline's influence expanded into politics, while Paul's following morphed into a movement. The battle lines were drawn, and neither side was backing down. And the audience? They were left to decide. Was this justice or censorship? Had Paul exposed the hypocrisy of media? Or had he simply faced the consequences of his own words? Was Karoline truly the victor, or had she just played the game better? As the world watched, one thing was certain: this battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. What do you think? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that make you think.